ask them if they too think it's a good idea. Because just because you think it's a good idea, and maybe a handful do also, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a product that can sell. It doesn't mean that the masses are going to want that product. I heard early on that if you can kind of dominate your hometown with your product, your hometown will help you carry it out to the world. A founder who feels the pain is a founder that angels or even VC people, I was going to say sharks, really are looking for. I mean, they want you to have skin in the game. They want to know that you are 100% leveraged on this.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Global Achievers. In today's episode, we have Travis Rosbach. He is the inventor of Hydro Flask, which is a billion-dollar brand today. So, in this episode, we'll be speaking to him how he went about inventing this product, how he scaled up his business in those early days, and how he's helping business owners and startups do the same today. So stick around, we'll be right back with the interview. Hello, and we have Travis joining us from Oregon. Travis, how are you today?
I'm well, Tarek. Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you as well. We have so much to talk about, especially, today's episode will be in and around branding, concepts around branding, how to build a brand, and who better to basically educate some of the up-and-coming entrepreneurs who will be watching this particular episode. So Travis, obviously, I want to get started a little bit about Hydro Flask and, maybe a little bit about how it came about, how you got the idea, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was living out in Oahu and owned a sign and screen printing company called Oahu Signs and Screen Printing. And one day I was out in Honolulu running some errands and I was thirsty and I was more than tired of seeing the plastic single-use bottles washing it up on the beach every day. And so went into the sporting goods store to pick up a reusable bottle, and there were none on the shelves. There was no more left. And I asked them, I'm like, what happened? They said, well, it's this stuff. It's called BPA. We're not really sure what it is or what's going to happen. But as a precautionary measure, the owner pulled all the bottles from the shelf. And I just asked, like, well, who's going to fill up this shelf? I'm like, I'm thirsty right now. And they said, nobody. There are no other brands. And it just kind of hit me in the back of my head and it came out my mouth. I will do that. And so I left and went back, and the guy, of course, he kind of like laughed at me, and went back to the sign company. And I asked the employees, who were younger and hipper and cooler than I was, what do I do for a water bottle? And they gave me a brand. I went out and I bought it. It was aluminum. It dented really easily. The mouth hole orifice, mouth size was too small to put ice cubes in. I couldn't put it in the freezer because it was aluminum. And it was dumb. I paid way too much money. And then to top it off, the gold stuff started to flake off. And I called the company and asked, I'm like, what is this gold stuff that I've possibly just ingested? They were super rude. They were not nice, and they didn't really want to talk to me. And so I thought, okay, well, this is really it. Like, I got to do this. I got to make a better water bottle. My brother had just started working at REI here in Oregon, and asked him. And he said, hey, yeah, there's a single wall stainless steel. It just came out. It's awesome. So I thought, oh, good. Well, maybe I don't have to do a water bottle company after all. And I bought their bottle, and it sucked just as bad. It dribbled all over my face and all over my shirt, and it was too hot to drink. It wasn't insulated. And I thought, yeah, I guess this really is what I need to be doing is creating a better bottle.
Okay, awesome. And which year was this?
That was about 2007.
2007. Okay. And what were some of the first steps that you took in order to implement your idea?
Well, the first thing I did was that was pretty much the extent of my market research because there were no other bottles. I could not find any other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I just so happened to know we had a client who would come in and get screen printing done for trips that he would take, kind of like a field trip
Mm-hmm.
to China, to the Canton Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be called the Canton Fair. And I asked him, I'm like, what are you doing over there in China? And he's like, well, that's where everything gets manufactured. I said, oh, well, how about a double wall vacuum insulated water bottle? He's like, yeah, no, there's no such thing. I'm like, well, I really want to come on your field trip. He's like, no, you can't come with me because there's no such thing. I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I could just find my own water bottle factory in China and go do it on my own. So I was able, and this was 2007, 2008. So we didn't have, or if there was, I surely didn't know about Alibaba or any of those, which I dare say silly sort of companies. It was hard to communicate with China back then. They weren't really on the World Wide Web back in 07, 08, 09. But I found one in Shanghai and I said, hey, I want to do some sort of insulated metal bottle. And I didn't know what that meant. But they said, yeah, sure, come on over. So I hopped on the next plane. I went over and I got there and found out that no, they don't actually do metal. They just do plastic. I'm like, well, shoot, that's the whole reason I'm here is to do an insulated bottle. So I started to leave and I was fairly upset. And this guy just came up out of nowhere and kind of grabbed my shoulder and said, hey, man, I got this cousin down in Hangzhou. You should go talk to him. And I didn't know what that meant, but yeah, sure. Let's go to Hangzhou. So I took off that afternoon, went down to Hangzhou and met my buddy Michael. And the rest is kind of history.
Okay, perfect. So once you sorted out the manufacturing part, how did you basically implement the sales, marketing, business development, or market development, actually, because there was no such product in the US. So how did you go about doing it on the US side?
Well, that's a really good question because we had, there were two other bottle brands, but they weren't really competing. So I did not pay a lot of attention to them because I didn't want to emulate what they were doing. I didn't want to replicate what they were doing. I wanted us to just be our very own entity. I wanted us to be a standalone product that people would think of Hydro Flask as a Hydro Flask, not as a water bottle. So I emulated a lot of the other cool brands that were not water bottles. At that time, there were brands that are not so cool anymore. And I just kind of followed their lead. They were in the outdoor space. What are they doing right? What are their colors? What are their fonts? Who are their demographics? How do they get sales? What trade shows do they go to? So I started to study a lot of that. Rockstar, Monster, Red Bull energy drink. Those were also cool and not really similar, but kind of like I kind of wanted to be, at all the surfing competitions. I wanted to be, investing in race cars and skydiving and squirrel shooting and all the crazy fun stuff too. So I borrowed and stole from those who were doing it the best. Coca-Cola. I mean, they have a wonderful cradle to the grave marketing campaign where they'll get you as early as they can get you and they'll feed you full of sugar up until the moment you're dead. And they'll say, thank you for being a customer. I was peddling water, so I had really good intentions for people to stay hydrated. So I figured if I could take some of those, not necessarily nefarious, but just very heavily capitalistic campaigns and use them for good, maybe we could hydrate the masses and maybe we could wake some people up to the benefits. And as that did start to happen, we found very quickly that a hydrated customer is a very viral customer. They go out and they scream it from the top of their lungs, from the top of the buildings, how well they feel and how good this product has helped them along the way. So yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that that was what came to mind.
Okay. No, I think you're quite right with that. And which actually brings me to the next thing that I wanted to know was how did you scale up the business in the early years?
Um, Word of mouth was huge. I mean, again, we had a product that was doing good. It was up to you to put water or whiskey in it. And those who put water in it, or at least first, felt really good about themselves and about everything that was going on in their lives. And so they helped us a lot. I heard early on that if you can kind of dominate your hometown with your product, your hometown will help you carry it out to the world. So we really focused on Bend, Oregon, Redmond, the fairgrounds, Portland Saturday Market, Bend music festivals, Munchin Music in the Parks, local hometown events. We were there locally. That helped a lot. I still have comments every week come in about, knowing us and seeing us and learning about us back in those old early days. But then the next thing that really took off was the sales rep channel. And that was huge. We'd go to one trade show and pick up 3 sales reps. Those 3 sales reps have 10 sales rep friends. Pretty soon we've got 800 sales reps, it felt like. And they were getting us into a number of doors all over the country and all around the world. And for a very small ROI, realistically.
Okay. And what were some of the challenges on the manufacturing end? Because these were being manufactured overseas. So I'm sure there were a lot of challenges, especially in those early years.
There were, yeah. The original challenge was just finding a manufacturer who would take the chance on us. Like I said, nobody was really doing vacuum insulated water bottles. That just wasn't something that they were interested in because there was no history of ROI for the factory. So to find the metal factories that would take the chance and the vacuum insulation factories, because in those days they were separate, and to get time on those machines was challenging because we had to make sure that a lot of the other ducks were in a row or else we'd miss our window of opportunity. So I'd spend weeks and weeks and weeks and months in China and in the factories just making sure that is this even possible? Can we even do this? And then now we did that part. Now can y'all do that part? Okay, now that you guys did that, can you guys do that? And just kind of figuring out the whole entire chain of events that would lead up to getting them delivered to our Bend, Oregon warehouse was quite a bit. And then after we started really getting traction and really selling, and we opened up Whole Foods and REI and South Korea and Japan and Europe. Well, now we have to pay for the inventory. And bottles were back then the dang near same price that they are now. They're about $5.50 a bottle. But when we started having to do 40,000 bottles a month, man, that adds up. And then 80,000 bottles a month. Oh my goodness. Like we had to find funding, and that was the next challenge.
Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of companies, starting from startups to other companies who are continuously looking for funding, right? And that's one of the big challenges I think any founders find themselves with. So what are some of the things that you would suggest to these founders who are now at the stage where you were at years ago?
Well, I think as far as the funding aspect goes, I think it's always good to start with personal debt. I mean, you want to be leveraged as much as you possibly can. I think that a founder who feels the pain is a founder that angels or even VC people, I was going to say sharks, really are looking for. I mean, they want you to have skin in the game. They want to know that you are 100% leveraged on this. So friends and family rounds are huge. went to my grandparents, went to my mom, went to my cousins, went to everybody we knew, and just said, hey, every $100 helps. And because it really does. In the early days, we sold everything we owned to start to play the game. And it was a lot. I mean, it was scary living out of a suitcase and just owning 3,000 water bottles. Like that was scary, but at the same time, it's like, well, even if I sold them for $10, at least I double my money and go on to, go back to the Caribbean and be a dive master. But there was a point after about the second or third order where it was like, there's no turning back. Like we've burned the bridges and broke the cookware. We're here. We're in this, or at least I was. I would constantly lose my partner and constantly lose employees when it got hard, but people were feeling better. They were being hydrated and they loved the product. We had to keep going some way, shape, or form.
Okay. And you said something which was really important, which is skin in the game, right? So with so much skin in the game, did you vision at that time that this particular brand that you were creating would become like $1 billion brand today?
Sort of. I knew I had the vision that it was going to be a massive brand. I personally never put a dollar amount to it. I never did it for money. I never did it for success or fame or thank you for having me here today. I never thought that I'd be here doing this, but at the same time, I always knew that Hydro Flask was going to be a long-standing brand that helped people feel better about themselves.
Okay. And in terms of creating this long-standing brand, I think that, a lot of founders, when they look back, they will think that, I should have done this or I should have done that when I started, and it would have made life so much easier. It would have, been so much smoother and things like that. So did you do anything similar while you were building that brand that, maybe looking back, you would have done differently, or maybe you did the absolute right things at that time?
Well, I think every situation is different. And every situation that I find myself in, good, bad, ugly, and different, I try to take on that situation fully and completely, just head first. I like to tackle one project at one time. And typically I find that as long as I'm doing it, everything I do with truth and with honesty and with pure of heart, and I'm doing it for the betterment of, it typically works out fairly well for me. Sometimes I get screwed over. Sometimes I'm with bad people and I don't know it. I don't recognize it. But for the most part, as long as I do the right thing, typically the right thing happens to me or to my brand or my business also. I think one thing that I probably would have appreciated was to have a mentor. I didn't really have time for a mentor back then. And during the 08, 09, 2010 sort of recession, depression, whatever that was that we went through, not a lot of people had money. Not a lot of people had time to offer. And so it just was never really anything that I thought of, because not only did I not have time, but I couldn't find a mentor had I looked, I felt, because they don't have any time or money to be my mentor anyway. So, but that's one thing I regret, not having more mentors or people to kind of like guide me as to what do I do now, because the growth was so rapid. There was a lot of learning that I had to do on my own, and a lot of mistakes were made along the way, but a lot of good was done along the way also.
Mm-hmm. So as you invested so much of your time, energy, basically everything during those early years, so was it difficult to walk away from it? Because this was your baby. You created this, right?
It was, yeah, and it still is. I keep up with it a little bit. I see it pop up on the LinkedIn feed and everything every once in a while, and I still am like, dang it, don't do that. No, I don't want to see that. That's not why I started the company. I didn't start the company for you to do what you just did. That's why I started the company, because the other brand did that. Don't be that brand. That hurts. That sucks. It's gone corporate. I knew it was going to go this direction, though, and I knew I did not want to play a corporate game. I didn't want to be the corporate CEO. So it was hard to walk away, but at the same time, I was glad to be gone. I was tired. The season was just over, and I got Hydro Flask in every store that I ever wanted to get us into. So I kind of checked all of the bucket list items off the list. And once the bucket list was full, I was ready to go on to a new bucket.
Okay. So speaking of new buckets, tell us about some of the things that you are doing right now.
Well, right now I'm doing quite a bit. I homestead. I have some land, and I'm building it out and clearing all the juniper trees or weeds. But also I'm doing the Tumalo Group, which is basically Travis Rosbach doing business. It's my LLC, and anybody who needs help with a business, consulting, coaching, sourcing, any real form of growth for their business, they come over, and then I call upon my Rolodex to help us. And we move through those early stages, all the way up and through some of the Fortune X number of companies call up and want to get more in touch with the common everyday person. And we help with those sorts of things too. So the Tumalo Group's my way to just like have fun and do business.
Excellent. And all those links will be in the description below. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Travis, find out some of the things that he's doing right now, you can easily find that from the links below. One of the things which I was really interested to learn, and that's why I was really looking forward to this particular conversation today. How do you distinguish between marketing and branding?
I look at branding and marketing as radically different. And I shouldn't say radically, quite different. I think that branding is a category of who are we? Why are we doing this? We are these colors, we are these fonts, we have these values, we have branding is more of a psychological almost. I would say it is. I'd say branding for me is more psychological. It's more of an ethos. It's more of who we are and who we aspire to continue to be, where the marketing is the physical, tangible vision of the brand. So the tangible marketing are the banners and the postcards and the business cards and the truck wraps and the billboards and the booth at the trade show. The booth at the trade show is the marketing, but the branding is reflected on the booth at the trade show. When you walk into the trade show and you meet people, they're a reflection of the branding, and their shirts are the marketing that is also reflective of the values that is in the branding. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does actually.
It's two different people. It's two different entities. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very well explained actually, and especially the booth reference. I think that kind of nails it, right? It's really well said. So speaking of the Tumalo Group, one of the issues I find speaking with startup founders and even small business owners, right? Growth seems to be one of the biggest issues, especially for startups. Any sort of insight about that, or how are you actually helping startups cope with issues around growth?
Well, I think there's probably 700 answers to 1,000 of that question. I think everybody's a little bit different, and every situation's slightly different. I think there are some very big kind of group lump sum answers that you're not performing as well as you could because you're off on this one category or that category or the other category, a little bit of overall of the three categories or X number of categories. I think everybody's a little bit different. Some have their cousin working for them and their cousin's dead weight. Cut the cousin and go on up. Others haven't spent enough money on marketing. They're spending too much on their sales reps, or they're spending not enough on their sales reps and too much on their marketing campaigns. Too much is going to social media when they're not getting a big enough ROI from it. So it's almost like a little bit of an intuitive thing, and it's also a little bit of a forensic thing where it's like, you tell me, what are you doing wrong? And typically owners and founders can say, well, I think that we're not doing this right, we're doing that wrong. What gets interesting is one founder will say one thing and the other founder will say the exact opposite. And then that's kind of where, like, okay, well, this gets fun now. And then we got to go in and see how can we improve upon the higher ROI endeavors, and how do we start to X-nay some of those losses and or turn them into a loss leader if we have to.
Okay, perfect. So I guess this also brings me to my next point. About entrepreneurs or people who are sort of sitting on the fence. They have a job, they're possibly not happy in that particular job, but they have that security of a paycheck, right? And especially with recession and all these things happening right now, people are super scared about taking that leap. Even at the best of times, people are just scared about taking that leap, right? So what do you say to those people who are sitting on the fence?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to every situation is unique. I don't want to, I don't want, I did a podcast once where I said something, and the next day I got a phone call and the guy said, hey, we sold our home and we're ready to go because of your podcast. I was like, oh, geez, I didn't mean for you to sell your house. But that worked out. They found a better home and they're happy and things are working well. I think that if you've been an entrepreneur before, well, then shut the hell up and get off the fence. If you've never been an entrepreneur before, I think that there's a lot of solace there's a lot of safety in having a job. There's a lot of security in that 401k or whatever those numbers are. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I would look at that as, my day job. And I would recommend doing your day job even better than you've ever done it before. See what else you can learn. See what else, if you are going to leave your day job, what can you learn before you go out the door? And the better you do at that day job, hopefully they'll pay you more. Hopefully you'll have more job security, and hopefully nights and weekends after a while will pay off, and you can launch and you can get going and X-nay the day job. But I wouldn't recommend blindly just jumping into entrepreneurial endeavors, especially with kids, especially with the mortgage, especially with all it comes with all of everyday life. The younger you are, the less responsibility you have. Yeah, totally. Go do entrepreneurial things, endeavors. But with kids, everything's kind of different. Like, I believe that your primary time must be spent, providing for the children.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. Very well said. And I know that every situation is different, but one thing I've come across over the years is that people come up with ideas. They want to solve a certain problem. They just found that idea. So what are some of the steps in general, again, that a person can take after they think that they have found that idea?
I think do a lot of market research. Ask all of your friends, all of your neighbors, everybody who you just happen to come across on the street. Ask them if they too think it's a good idea. Because just because you think it's a good idea and maybe a handful do also. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a product that can sell. It doesn't mean that the masses are going to want that product. So I would look at the sort of response. Is it an overwhelming positive? Absolutely yes. Or is it a, yeah, that's cool. You can't take it, yeah, that's cool, and chalk it up as I'm on my way to quitting my day job. If it's, oh my gosh, we need that now. What are you doing? Why have you held this from us? That gets a little bit of a higher vote, in my opinion. Then call Travis. Come find me, and then we'll get going. Yeah, make sure you can fund it and everything, and I say that most products cost about $100,000 to get to market. You don't need it all up front. You don't need it all at once, but between credit cards and, selling the car or taking out a second mortgage, however, friends, family, colleagues, whatever, rich uncle, it's going to cost about $100,000 to get to market.
Okay. So, as we're winding down the interview, I want to circle back and ask something which you had actually mentioned, was that people wanted Hydro Flask, So how do you build up a loyal customer base like that?
I just continue to listen. Like, what else do you want? What colors do you want? What color purple do you want? What color red do you want? Just ask a tremendous amount of questions. The customer is not always right. I think that's a fallacy, but they know what they want. And so even if we give it to them and then they decide they don't want it or they're wrong, it's good to listen to the customer. It's good to listen to the people, don't bite the hand that feeds you, sort of thing. And they'll tell you what they want. They'll tell you what they don't like. They'll tell you what they do like. And I think that especially in the early days, you really have to listen to them. There's a point at which the company will know more. We know that it's better off if we sell at this location and not at that location. Yes, that did upset people, but we need to think of the longevity of the whole entire team and not just the people who enjoyed buying it from that store, for an example.
Okay, excellent. Very good information. Travis, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate that. And anyone watching this episode obviously will get a lot of value here. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that?
Probably info@tumalogroup.com, TUMALOGROUP. info@tumalogroup.com. I'm also Travis Rosbach on LinkedIn, ROSBACH. I get there sometimes and check on that as well.
Okay, perfect. And as mentioned before, all those links will be in the description below. So please feel free to reach out to Travis. Thank you so much for your time again, Travis. I really enjoyed our conversation and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you, Tarek. It's good to be here.
Hi, thanks for watching. We really appreciate that. If you like what you saw, then give us a like. It really helps with YouTube's algorithm. If you want to see similar kind of videos in the future, then subscribe to the channel. And finally, if there's a type of professional or business owner you want featured on a future episode, then let us know in the comment box below. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.